OOCS Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 381, Capes and Conundrums. Got him, Harold notes out of nowhere. Pardon? Brutality asks, and then catches the thermally resistant communicator that is tossed at him. Hafid, you need to see this. Hafid looks up from where he was hanging onto a wall and having his hair blown back due to the sheer heat causing the air to all but scream out of the relatively shallow cave in the obsidian wall. He puts his wing into the wind and lets it carry him out before gently gliding towards his father. His eyes lock in at the image being displayed, and his landing is harder and far less graceful than it normally is. He takes the communicator and stares at the image for a moment, then starts reading the contents. As Harold's ears start ringing from a sound he can only feel and not hear, brutality gives him a gentle smack to stop him. Hafid looks around before nodding. This is a problem, he states. A fair understatement, Harold notes. They want the entire world and are dancing on the graves of an entire people to pull it back. Vent later. Right now we need a preliminary plan. Brutality orders. This is your area of specialty. How do we stop this? We need to either have this all legally, or we need more of it to get it to stick beyond the illegal manner in which it was gathered. From my understanding of local law, we're working with a system that will allow us to use this as an excuse to do some proper digging. But that would also involve legal warrants and search notices, Harold states, which would give them time to hide things. Brutality notes. Bequas could be of great use to us. Miss Tonk is clearly not born of the species she currently is. Not a crime in any stretch, but a member of an extinct species and not advocating in any manner for her new bloodkin to be resurrected? That is very, very odd. Again, not illegal, but quite odd. There's also the question of why communicating with her adopted child would require the use of privacy screens. To say nothing of the sheer absurdity of opulence being demonstrated in that apartment. That's nouveau riche-style decoration, Harold notes, and brutality looks to him. What? You don't strike me as the type who would be concerned with such things. It was part of my training, or rather Herbert's training, with Sir Philip. Decoration styles say a lot about the psychology of the person decorating, and the Tonks clearly want to be seen as rich and yet local at the same time. But that kind of glassware chips and cracks easily, and when it chips it will have a brutal edge on them. So the appearance is more important than practicality or anything else. A single mistake with that glassware, and it all shatters. And what would you recommend? Brutality asks in amusement. Silverware with actual silver. When polished, it looks amazing, is plenty tough for practical use, and will tarnish if exposed to numerous poisons, so it can protect you too. My uncle suggested much the same. Uncle? The closest your comics had was Alfred. My uncle did a lot of work in raising me when my father was busy. A good man, a very good man. Brutality admits. Sounds like a hell of a man, Harold says with a smile. I get the feeling there will be an enormous amount of shenanigans if he were to meet Sir Philip. Yes, I've looked into yours, Sir Philip. There would likely be several more worlds under proper management again if they were to meet. I figured, which means we have to keep them apart, Harold says with a grin, and Hafid scoffs. She's in the body of an ash pelt. The question is, how did she get it, and in what manner has she done so? She would have had to do this fairly recently, as she has had a career in the banking industry before. You can't be on call always anyways, so she either has a large false synth body she pilots like a suit of armor, or she has two bodies and this one is a cyborg, Harold states. It is also possible that she has cybernetic components to control a synthetic body and is entirely within the native. Brutality notes. Either way, she's doing enough shady behavior for us to drop on her, if she wasn't in hiding. And likely the place she's in hiding is off-world and in another jurisdiction, where a random synth wandering around wouldn't so much as raise an eyebrow. Hafid says bitterly, which is to our advantage. She's getting distance. We know she's getting distance. So we gather everything we can and simply wait for her to come back. She thinks the danger has passed and lands right into our waiting hands. Relatively. I'm liable to leave in shortish order. The local undaunted will have all this ready to pounce. No one knows what to do when the tide of streams washes over them. Every time you bring that up, it sounds less real and more absurd. That's the idea. Socially invisible when they are not outright welcome, too absurd to be believed, and therefore dismissed but still entirely effective. Makes the streams dangerous and useful. While interesting, we should get back to our investigations. If we can place this all on Miss Tonk, then we can block her from further attempts to interfere with the revival of the actual natives, and not simply body-jacked clones, Hafid states. That's assuming that she's the only party involved. She likely isn't. True, however, she is the only current enemy to the natives we are aware of and can act against. It will bring us no closer to the others to not do anything, and might indeed embolden them. Make an example? Either way, she does require punishment. Agreed, but right now we need to gather more information. And if Terrence's excited movements are any indication, brutality leads on. Hey, I found something, Terry calls over. Scene change, Winifred and the girls. This seems a little silly to do now, Winifred notes. Few better times for it. We're all somewhat agitated. We have excess energy and no direct target. We all want something to be done on some level. So this is what I've come up with, Giria justifies. I thought you'd be out and helping with things. There is little left to help with. The beasts are being redirected. The investigation into the attack is underway, and as you yourself understand, we are warriors. Unless there is direct fighting to happen, there is little for many of us to do. Beyond our additional skills, but unless you'd like Agatha to measure you for proper power armor and getting you to assist her in crafting it, there is little else to do for her. We've already hunted, and the world is well studied, so that's Javra out. We're not about to enter a war, so there goes my expertise. We have an overfull armory as is, so Dumaya is sitting on her hands. Uma has years until she can see if her child with Harold will result in the Grand Warrior, and Velocity is in the waiting period as her people introduce themselves to the galaxy. Giria explains, and if not for the fact she has a complete face paint on, Winifred would think she was joking. So how do you intend to test me? Provoke me until I lose my temper? That's not likely to work. And why not? The invisible Velocity asks. Because I do not believe any of you twisted enough or cruel enough to put an actual child in actual danger. And short of that, it's rather hard to provoke me, Winifred states. Which is why instead we will be focusing with these, Giria says as she reaches into an expanded pouch and brings out a large bowl with a stasis field generator on the bottom. She deactivates and a heavenly smell emerges. If you can grab some pierogies, then you may have them. She holds up another bowl she deactivates the stasis on. It's a white sauce. They pair quite well with sour cream. Winifred raises an eyebrow and huffs in amusement. Really? Really? Giria states. Winifred moves forward and finds a coil of Giria's tail holding her back. She keeps moving forward, and Giria begins sliding away. Winifred puts a paw on the coil and puts her weight on it to force it down. Giria may as well be carved from solid steel and set upon stone for all she moves. Winifred jumps over the coil and finds the tip of the tail wrapped around her midsection, not hurting her, not trying to squeeze or stop, but ensuring that she can't get to the food. You know I could fold space and just reach it, right? It's not too complicated a technique. You could, but like how you do not believe I would hurt a child, I do not believe you would cheat the test. You're not a thief. You don't cheat, Giria says, and Winifred raises an eyebrow and sighs. So, how do you solve the problem? Straightforward movement will not get you the prize of cheese and bacon pierogies. Well, when you phrase the question like that, Winifred says as she steps back and forces Giria to let go with her tail. She does so without a fight, and Winifred begins pacing around her. Then there's a crashing sound as Winifred leaps along the floor 3 times and puts her hand over the bowl of food in the same second. Enjoy your appetizer. Tell me when you're ready for the fish course. Are you basing these tests around a multi-course meal? Winifred asks as she dips a pierogi into the sour cream and eats it. We are. Care to eat more? Tomorrow I do, Winifred agrees. So is this going to be, each of us has a different course and a different test. You're the one who insists you're not a warrior, and we're testing you to see how you do. And what was this supposed to accomplish? How do you handle things when brute force doesn't work? Answer, you go around. And if simply pacing around normally won't help, you do it quickly and find a way through. I approve you're first wife, aren't you? Winifred asks. I am, Giria responds. Then logically, it's only your approval I need. For larger, less friendly families. But we do things a bit differently. So the rest of the girls need to at least accept you, if not approve of you, before I say yes. But unless they say no, you have my yes, Giria says. Is that what you did with everyone? Of course not. Everyone is different. Dumya was enraptured by watching a recording of him doing battle. Uma I knew to be looking for a strong partner. Yavra was a sparring partner that was charmed by his melee abilities. Agatha fought him in a tournament of plasma swords and saw just how far he's willing to go to win. And Velocity was a slower burn, mixed in with some orders and... It's complicated, Velocity states. Not really, I keep track of it just fine. You're of literal divine blood and have been born and raised for this kind of nonsense. Winifred notes, you follow the primal faith? No, but I know of it. Devastation, descendant of Thessalia Lady of War. One of the calmer war primals, although it took me a while to figure out the difference between a war primal and a battle primal. Yes, that confuses a lot of people, Giria states. So who is holding the fish course? Winifred asks as she finishes off the last of the pierogies. Didn't even notice her eating that fast. Someone mutters sand. She turns to see it was Javra. It's actually Javra herself. Technically, it's not fish, it's whale, and I got some help cooking it. Hope you don't mind. That's more than fine, Winifred says. So what's the test? Reflexes. Stop me from whacking you as you eat, Javra says before tossing over a pair of large bracers. So you don't get hurt, it's a test, not a trial. She suddenly has a long staff and then points to where Uma is putting down a very large pie. Whale pie, that sucker is near bursting with gravy, veggies, tasty safe spices, and of course, meat, Javra says cheerfully. Don't let me knock it out of your hands. Winifred silently puts the bracers on, cracks her neck, and runs for the food. She blocks one staff strike, but gets bonked on the head by another before she can even get in 10 steps of the pie. OOCS Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 382, Capes and Conundrums. There is a deep impression of something in the axiom. It's mostly decayed, but Terry is moving strangely. His body language has shifted entirely, and the only person not worried by it is Harold. Brutality gives Harold a look. He's a sorcerer. When they get really spacey, it means they're talking with something they're linked up with, but not present. He's basically on his custom communicator, Harold explains. You see this a lot in sorcerers. The Apuk consider it a scholarly look. You know, being lost in thought and such. It's odd that the Apuk consider them both objects of horror and objects of affection. We can blame their culture for that in a few lucky crusades, Harold says. Basically, a few crusades got ahead of sorcerous vengeance, and the sorcerers tried to pay people back, but had no idea how to do it. So out of nowhere, war ladies were being followed by thoughtful men who were unbeatable in a straight-up fight and had to be wooed rather than claimed or taken. Meaning they became a symbol of romance. At the same time, they became a symbol of brutality. The duality of life? Or is it more irony? Drac asks as he lets the scanner run off. Okay, so there are trace elements of what would be needed to form a teleport beacon here, but that's not enough to prove anything other than a small stash of vegetation for the plastic and a slight amount of girdle or stock. Hang on, Terry says as he nods as if he slowly feels out a complicated and power-intensive axiom technique he actually can't do alone. I need to... He wanders over to where Drac is detecting the rendered-down remains of what might have been Kutha once, and holds out his hands. Axiom turns and churns as the burning hot obsidian goes runny again, and bits of separated stock and girdle float upwards and come back together. The axiom swells and churns as it reforms into a totem the size of a fist in the shape of a bullet. Clever. Is there another one? Harold asks, and Terry looks into the now howling cavern. The cave has cooled in such a way that the wind is moving in such a way as to howl as the wind passes over the mouth and is forced out through the center of the mess. Terry holds out a hand, and after a few moments, a small ingot of carved kutha is reformed in his grip, and he holds it up. Very well done. Potentially not the most useful evidence, but very well done. What do you mean, not the most useful? This is how they got the snake into the city. But does it have any markings or leads into who made it? Harold asks, and Terry examines them before deflating. It's good to have them, and it does mean that there's another potential piece of evidence. But like most evidence, there is no one super piece that just solves all the problems. This does bring us closer, though. How? Terry asks. That's easy. Drax says, holding up his custom data pad, and it shows a highlighted part of the lava trenches on a world map. There had to have been a drone, shuttle, or agent in this area. And how did you get that? Terry asks, and Drax smiles. Those totems you're carrying are a beacon and an impact teleporter. Someone shot a lava serpent, and it was teleported to the beacon. Simple, no? I guess. Lava serpents are tracked, all of them at all times. It's a safety precaution, meaning we find out where the snake came from. Not hard as T would have vanished right before, and we get the idea of where at least some hint of the person was. Even if they never touched anything in the area, the endless satellite coverage would have spotted something. And these are the good satellites with public access to keep track of the active danger on World. Drac explains. Excellent. So we know where it came from and how it got here. But do we have a conclusive who? Hang on, I'm scanning the area in the minutes leading up to the attack, Drax says before grinning. And here we go, a big old handheld railgun sticking out the side of a shielded shuttle. But this isn't railgun ammo. It had a casing that fell away. It's a common trick when you don't want to trust things to cruder coil guns. Coil guns are not crude. Compared to the precision and powers a railgun can give you, they kind of are. More robust, though, and easier to maintain, Drax says as he waves Terry over and shows the exact shuttle, and slows down the recording to show that indeed, a 4-part casing peels away shortly after leaving the barrel of the railgun to allow the payload to continue. Okay, but I don't see any stats on that shuttle. Common trick by people who think they're slick. Turning off your IFF and switching the plating and ID numbers on the side of your vehicle. There are ways around it, especially in a place with low traffic and high monitoring. I would have caught this at half your age. Give me a minute and I'll give you the registration of the shuttle, no problem, Drax says with a grin. This is just another day for you guys, isn't it? Terry asks. Actually, it's a little calmer than normal. We usually work on our own cases and only occasionally help each other, rather than go for it from ground level up together, Todd remarks. Not to say there isn't some potential trouble I haven't spotted. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that someone is smuggling in an innocent in gray, Todd remarks, and Terry just lets out a confused tone as the rest of the Waynes look disgusted. It means there's a place I found that potentially is smuggling children in stasis fields. I've got cameras in there but haven't found anything yet. I'm going in after we're done with this. Can I come? Absolutely not. You're a growing boy and need sleep. And what I suspect is there will get in the way of that, Todd says. God know it gets in the way of mine from time to time. Oh, that's bad. Yeah, Todd remarks. Scene change. Winifred and the girls. There is a crunching sound as the caught staff is crushed in a powerful Asadub grip, turning the fighting staff into a 3/4 staff as she tosses away the pulped and snapped piece she just mangled. The whale pie is good. Could use a bit more time in the oven, but it's a very good first try on a new dish. The staff comes down, but she has the pie in a sturdy grip that will not be broken with ease. She's just leaning close enough to the bowl to stop Javra from easily smacking it away. I think you're kind of cheating this, Javra notes, and Winifred shrugs as she quickly eats the meal. Regardless, she's winning the contest, just not in the way expected, Girius says, and Winifred sighs before leaning back. Fine, I'll do this properly, she says, sitting upright and then snapping her arm out to block the staff. It's a little hard to focus with food right in front of me. I've never actually met an Osi-Doosie before you. Osadub, and you're from an isolated world, right? It's understandable, Winifred says as she shifts which hand she's holding the pie tin with and takes a bit of a bite off on it as she wrestles with the repaired staff before letting Javra go. She swallows the mouthful. What is it that you're curious about? How hungry are you? I've seen some big beasts eat less than while being far bigger. My biology is really good at converting food into a very dense fat. This fat is storing the food for later, Winifred explains. It's actually something that separates the early history of my species from the Sonier. Like them, my kind were initially hunted, then uplifted when we evolved proper minds to counter the pressure hunting put on us. But unlike the Sonier, we were hunted more for meat than for the challenge. Apparently, osadub meat is marbled, delicious, and so perfectly fatty, and with a slight touch of grease that it needs no seasoning, tenderizing, or preparation beyond preferred sauces or seasonings. Are you hungry while describing your own meat? A little. But like almost every sentient species, we're actually poisonous to our own kind in large quantities. Really? It's a strange galactic constant. Eat your own kind too much, and you get all sorts of sicknesses, Winifred states. Really? That explains some of the crazy rumors from before the Slaver Empire was collapsed. Normally, you only hear of such madness in SNCC with a degenerative disorder. It has two known varieties, general and personal. The mantis women, right? They can go cannibal, Javra notes as she takes another swing. Winifred eats fast while also seeming to savor things. Correct, general consumptive disorder makes them regard fellow people as food. Personal consumptive disorder makes them regard only other SNCC as food. Occasionally they'll take a swing at a Drin, Bigrob, or Lete. What about Urthani? They're bug people too. The common assumption is the sheer amount of fur confuses the sickness, Winifred answers. Makes them think Urthani are mammals instead. Oh, weird. The galaxy is a wide and wondrous place, Winifred says, holding up the now empty bowl. There are many worlds where a whale meat pie would be considered the height of cuisine, and just as many who would consider it a despicably evil thing to even taste. And you? Food is food. I only start to get nervous if it's poisonous, something that can't be sampled twice, or was once able to argue for its life. I'm sure that all animals, and even plants, have ways to argue for their life, Javra says. You know what I mean, Winifred states. And sampled twice? If it's the last of its kind in some way, then it's an evil thing to eat it. Bringing something to extinction for a meal is going too far. Unless you're in a life or death situation, a lot of rules get set down if you'll starve to death without eating it, Winifred notes. So your morality is about food? Javra asks, confused. Well, no, but also yes. It's the line of connection to make practical wisdom understandable. If you can have a meal, then you can find a way out of your problems. That one means that so long as you take care of your necessities, then you'll likely have the means to solve more complicated problems. Eat for tomorrow, for there might not be a meal then, is about using what you have now to prepare for the unknown. Cool, Javra notes before flittering around her. You could have cheated, but did your best to play fair. You've got okay reflexes, but not on danger sense level. Strong, very practical, and you know a lot. One final test. And that would be, Winifred asks, and Javra tosses aside her staff and flies into Winifred. Excuse me? She stays there for a bit, getting comfortable, feeling around on her back, and then nods. Yep, good and cuddly. Any Mattak kitties will be safe on you. Is that really your test? Well, hugs are important for children, and whacking you with a stick or talking to you doesn't tell me how good you are at hugging, Javra says, and Winifred blinks at that simultaneously flawless and absurd logic. Here, I got this. Then Javra takes the emptied pie tin. So who's next? Or rather, what's next? Winifred asks. Defense on the soup course, Agatha says. Soup course? You can eat as much as you want, but there will be small air bursts aiming for the bowl. You're not allowed to grab the bowl, but you can block the air bursts. Some will be stronger than others, and if you want all of it, you need to be able to judge which air bursts need to be blocked, which ones can be ignored, and how to block them without causing a back wind to knock the bowl over anyways. So more a puzzle than a fight? A lot of fights are basically puzzles. What do you have? What do they have? And how do you use what you have to get past what they have to get to what you want? Agatha explains. Now, people generally prefer to have the question of what they have to be an overwhelming advantage, but it's not always the case. She hands over a large spoon, more akin to a ladle. You'll need this. Thank you. What kind of soup is it? Cream of mushroom. OOCS, Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 383, Capes and Conundrums. Thank goodness that part of this is finished. Nightwing's notes. Why? Not enough excitement. Drac teases him. No, the human is disturbing. Nightwing says, an eerie one turns to Harold, who's leaving footprints of melted obsidian. Then I have done a good job. How are you friends with Todd again? Brutality asks. He fights good, Todd states. That would do it. Brutality says in a lightly teasing tone. I am more than a pretty face, Harold states, and Drax snorts hard at the implications as Nightwing chuckles. Ha! Why would being pretty... Oh, that's nasty. You're nasty, Terry states even as Ace pets him over being so cute. And please stop that, Aunt Ace. Her response is to pick him up, and in a twisting movement, somehow ends up with him sitting on her back as she walks on all fours. How did you even do that? Acrobatically? Nightwing's asks in a teasing tone. Duh, Terry asks in return. Anyways, we're in the wrong city for this. We need to go to the next hemisphere, a fair bit closer to where that massive building fell into the trench. Drac notes. Makes sense to me. Harold notes. What has me surprised is just how many massive facilities are actually built into the trench walls. Thermal power is good, clean, non-axiom power. Not to mention there are a lot of resources in the gases that come up. Drac says. But yeah, higher in the canyons, and a lot of buildings are just behind a few dozen feet of rock at most. And since it's all volcanic and already heated, a few shaped charges pointing down drops the building into a lava serpent's coils, Harold notes. Yeah, thankfully I got everyone out in time. How did that turn out? They're still talking to those girls, or rather we were, until things went boom. Were they the target? Brutality asks. If they were, then the attack was massively off target, which is possible. The drone which delivered the explosive was intercepted after all. So they may know something useful. Yes, but we're in the hurry up and wait part of that lead, Harold states. None of them need an escort to the other city? Drac asks. Little brother, I think we're well and truly past the point of this investigation where we need to be subtle, Nightwing states. There is never a point where caution is unnecessary. Hofford states, hey guys, Dad wants to talk to me. I'll be back soon, Terry says before vanishing in a woodwalk. Ace lets out a sigh before standing upright. You really like having him around, hun? Harold asks, and Ace nods eagerly. She's been... Nightwings begins before turning to Ace, and she nods. She's been struggling to find a partner she likes. She wants someone quiet, calm, and cute. But the only ones she can find won't respect her choice of silence, or have something hidden. Ah, so she's letting out her maternal instinct with Terry? Ace signs, if not mother, then aunt, and Harold nods. All right, fair enough. We all need someone. Speaking of, though, do any of your... No, that's a personal question, sorry. Harold begins to ask, then backs off. Continue, Brutality states. I've met one of your wives, but, well, if you're asking how well my married life matches up to the comic that was reflecting me, it doesn't come close. Or perhaps it does. I have many wives, and we're a very energetic family. We do a great deal and come together regularly to support and strengthen each other. Brutality explains. Jin Shui, as you know her, tends to spend a great deal of time with Hafid, as he's so very much her child in not only blood but in demeanor. Ace's mother is an empty-hand adept that is always looking for another challenge. Nightwing's mother is an acrobatic thrill seeker that she used to be a criminal, Nightwing states. I was attempting to be diplomatic. What? I have no issue with my mother being in the books as Catwoman, although Mom has issue with her being less of a fighter than she actually is. Really? She's a Takra with a Fally father. Nightwings explains, and Harold thinks for a moment before chuckling. So a handful? Harold asks in amusement. If by a handful you mean we met as she was robbing a museum with top-grade security merely to see if she could, then yes, a handful. Brutality states, and Harold chuckles. It's not so much that I have a type, as I am the type of other people, Brutality remarks, but a great many of my loves are former lawbreakers. Ah, the big bat of justice brought them to the side of justice. Downright Adam West of you, Harold states, and Brutality is just confused by that one. The really corny live-action show, Adam West was the lead actor. Oh, Brutality notes before thinking. Drac, do not. Got a video. Put it down. We got him to dance the... Drac continues, and his custom tablet is swiped from him. Oh, come on, he's a friend. I'm still not entirely sure how you talked me into that, but it's going to be deleted. Yeah, like I don't have more copies than you've had hot meals, Drax says in an amused tone. I trained you too well. Thanks, Dad. If it's that bad, I don't need to ask, Harold says. What he pointedly doesn't say is that he has no idea what the actual dance looks like, so the mental image of Brutality switching from ballroom to ballet to breakdancing is far more entertaining than an actual dance that can be performed by a non-augmented human can be. Scene change. Winifred and the girls. And you still have the gall to say you're not a warrior? Why? Agatha asks as Winifred casually blocks another airburst with her body. Because in the end, so much of combat is pointless, Winifred replies. How so? In the end, almost every war ends with both sides coming back to the table and renegotiating, this time with one side having a much, much stronger position to argue from, Winifred remarks. And if everything can be solved by talking, then fighting it out is generally a waste of time. Says the girl who broke a space shuttle over another girl's head. That was a slip of temper, not me in a normal state of mind, Winifred counters as she starts scraping the bottom. And what about people who won't negotiate? Who will not deal with you in good faith? You walk away and refuse to deal with them, Winifred states. And those that force the issue? You politely but firmly stop them, Winifred replies. Why are you so determined to avoid conflict? Why are you so insistent that conflict is needed? Winifred returns. Because it often is. Otherwise, mercenary, bounty hunter, and soldier would not be guaranteed professions in every system and city. Sure, the balance will shift from city to city, but you can always find all three. To say nothing of the hidden criminal element in every society, or not so hidden in some places, Agatha says. It's more a truth of nature than anything else. All the more reason to conquer it, or are we just slaves to our lower states? No minds to consider for the future? Coming from the woman whose greatest concern is food, Agatha challenges. Food is required. There is no way around it. Even if you attempt to feed on nothing but Axiom or intravenous supplements, you need something to power you. In that light, why not go full synth? There are reasonable limits to things. How is being a synth unreasonable? Winifred seems surprised herself and loses focus as she thinks. An errant blast of wind takes the bowl away and sends it tumbling, but it was down to the dregs anyways, and she just sits on the pedestal it was on as she continues to think. That is a very good point. I need to think. Just like that? You dragged a contradiction out of me. I've gone wrong somewhere and I'm trying to understand where. I've made a mistake, and I need to figure it out, and I doubt I have the time to sleep on it for a week or 3, Winifred states as she taps at her chin with the licked, clean ladle. And you're thinking on. My thought process on why violence is a bad idea. You've brought up some good points, and my argument that there is an easier path goes up against my aversion to the idea of becoming a synth, which would be the easier path for bodily functions. Sleep, food, and far more would no longer be an issue, but I don't want it. But it's the easier path. But I want the easier path when it comes to confrontation. Where is the contradiction coming from? Scene change, bringer of enemy torment, and dust into the air that settle almost as quickly as they rise. The slight winds in this area are just enough to coat everyone, making them and their unique physiology stand out even more. Her gaze turns and there are drones with visible cameras on them. Her blood nearly runs cold. They're seen. They're blatantly and obviously seen. There is no going back, no bullshitting this, and no way to pin the blame on someone else. They are seen. Training kicks in, and before she can hyperventilate herself into a panic, she gets control. She dismounts from the leaper and gestures for her women to follow her lead. She faces the cameras head on and comes to parade ground rest. Hands behind her back, feet shoulder width apart and shoulders back as her neck straightens up, and she looks directly ahead to the drones. They tilt upwards to look at her face, then look down as more and more join behind her. Greetings, citizens of Scathach. We are not your enemies. As you can plainly see from our efforts to remove these creatures from your city to prevent both damage and loss of life. We are, however, private individuals and value our privacy. So while I understand I cannot stop you from recording us, I request you that you do no more than that, although I know for a fact you will, because the galaxy cannot help but pry. She then opens her hood and vanishes from sight, followed by her troops. The drone records the footsteps they leave as they march through the ash. Scene change. Blazing Iron, the youthful bull. He lets out a slight clicking noise as he sees the next to last one of the birds drop out of the sky. Unfortunately, the wind is pushing along the corpse, and feathers are made to catch the wind. He gets ahead of it and picks up the parked air van to move it out of the way. The giant ball of dead meat and feathers slams into the ground and rolls over, a wing opening up and slapping into his back. He sets down the air van and walks up to the corpse before kicking it. It does nothing but vent a bit of his frustration. The entire city is on alert and was nearly destroyed because one sociopath decided that their bad day had to be shared with everyone else, and the legislature-slinging losers actually thought they were saying something worth a damn when they complained about him roughing up those pieces of dung. There's a cracking sound as one of the stupid new statues sticking out the side of the window was apparently damaged or just badly made and begins to fall. There are screams, there is panic. People scatter, but not everyone. Several women are paralyzed at the sight of death coming for them. Then his tackle knocks them all out of their stupors and carries them out of the field of danger. "Don't do that!" "What?" one of them demands. Apparently he knocked her sense back in. He sets them all down after his charge and got them all into a massive hug. 5 women in one charge. Not bad. His best is still that group of 8 years ago. Don't freeze up if everything is going to hell. It gets you killed no matter what world you're on, he tells them before going for his police communicator. And this time, for the first time in a long time, his hand closes on just that. "Hey, the skies are nearly clear. How are things on your end?" "Lepers are out of the city. Snake is dead. How are things near you?" Great Hill Supplanter asks. "Damn bouncing beasts damage the buildings around the city. We got falling rubble potentially squishing people. We need a public announcement for caution and then building inspectors to comb over everything. The newly built statues are in a perfect position to fall over and put some poor sucker into a morgue." "Understood, I'm on it," Hill states. "Don't strain yourself tiny." OOCS into a wider galaxy, Part 384. Capes and Conundrums. Admiral Fallows just stared at the report, wondering if perhaps the madness reported about the human was infectious. It would explain, only a little, but it would explain things in part at least. They were officially exposed as heroes who helped contain the chaos of someone's absurd plan of expanding small herbivores to a dangerous size, and you? Okay. I understand exposure is inevitable at this point. I understand. No one is comfortable with it, ma'am, but from what we can see of public discourse, they think we're fans of the same media as them and are effectively playing the local games. Torment, still covered in ash, says, meaning, by standing out and being private at the same time, we somehow blend in. Torment states and Fallows just stares for a moment. Really? Really? You girls have really overthought things when it comes to stealth. Private Stream notes. Am I speaking to an actual high-ranking member of your ridiculous collection or not? You're not, but hang on. I'll shift control of this one over. Give me a moment. Private Stream says before going limp for a moment, and then going into a sort of standby mode that has his cap fall down over his eyes. Then the image shifts again, and the hat is pushed up to reveal white eyes with red markings near them. Hello, this is Herbert Jameson, First Private Stream. Actually first, Admiral Fallows asks. Yes, I invented the persona to use while I was still being trained for intelligence work. It was designed as the overeager assistant to the befuddled retiree persona of my mentor. I noticed I was socially welcome or ignored just about everywhere, and have been taking blatant and shameless advantage of that ever since. Herbert says with a grin. Sounds useful. Oh yes, if I return someone's communicator, it doesn't even cross their minds that I stole it to begin with and uploaded a tracker virus while I had it, Herbert remarks happily. Still, things are going forward at a rapid pace. We seem to have accidentally spooked one of the malefactors for the natives, and they're applying what appears to be the do-everything strategy for dealing with the problem, which isn't working too well. It's giving us legal ways to turn the screws. Will my biometrics, face and name even be needed? Potentially, I'm not putting aside any possibilities. We have a very fluid and energetic situation on the ground. There's no way to tell one way or another what's going on. We think the perpetrator has gone into hiding, but there's no telling how many or what contingencies they may have in place. They've already shown a willingness to bring a lava serpent into the city shields, which is the kind of threat on par with arming an extremely high-yield explosive in the middle of a heavily populated area. If they're willing to do that, what else are they willing to do? Disturbing. What else do we know? We suspect that they were aiming a bomb at their employees in undaunted custody. It was intercepted but did damage undaunted property. This occurred as the animals and lava serpent were unleashed on the city, meaning it was likely a coordinated attack, or more likely, a distraction that is irritating. Still, things seem to be proceeding apace. Oh yes, especially with what Rain has found. Unending rain of retribution? What has she found? She followed one of the conspirators and maintained stealth until they dropped their guard, received further orders that exposed them as a conspirator, and then recorded several snippets of conversation that can easily be construed as a full-on confession, Herbert explains. She's on her way back now, as I understand it. Very good. One final question. And that would be? Velocity's current location and activities. Testing a potential sister wife, Herbert remarks. She's getting along very well with my other sisters-in-law. And how are they testing this woman? What's going on? Winifred Bearbell Stein is an Osadub woman with a very common name for her people. We encountered her employed as a low-level worker for the source of our latest little conspiracy, paid through a dummy asset to destroy evidence in the form of the long, desiccated bones of the natives. Why we're not certain, but Hafid Wayne was thrown into such a rage by the sight of it, he attacked unprovoked and had to be dragged off, leading to her having her back up and eventually negotiating in such a way she moved to extract a sexual favor for her cooperation. We assume it was because she wanted to just dissuade Harold entirely and go back to work, but he accepted, at which point she has been struggling to adjust, but clearly enjoyed it, but also does not think herself a warrior, which is the condition for joining his growing family. Why? Because he plans to have a hectic, action-packed life, and bringing in people who can't handle that is downright unfair, Herbert replies. He finds his way into trouble and loves it. He's a fighter, a warrior, a soldier, and a bit of a lunatic. If someone can't handle that, then a relationship with him is a bad idea. And they're testing to see if this Winifred can handle it. They do not doubt she can handle it, but she seems to have doubts about herself. She is very powerful, practical, and focused. But, Herbert shrugs. She says she's not a warrior. She broke a shuttle over another woman, after literally smashing her through the deck plating in a rage. But she's apparently not a warrior. Perhaps by her species standards, she is not. I am a commanding officer and not a spy or scout for the Vishanian. But my natural skills in stealth means that near anyone would dismiss that claim out of hand. Fallows says, and Herbert shrugs. Very true, hence the tests. I think. You think. Despite my skill in cold reading, I cannot read minds. Scene change. Winifred and the girls. She nods to herself and stands up before looking at all of them. All right then, can this be turned into teaching instead? You wish to be a warrior now? I no longer think it wise to shy away from a warrior's life. If I don't want the easier path that being a synth would offer me, then I clearly crave something more. Physical labor and clear thought can likely give me most of what I want in life. But for the rest, I will need skills beyond what I have now, abilities I do not yet possess, and likely many of those skills and abilities will be on the warrior's path, Winifred says. So if you don't mind, I think I need some training instead of testing. Is this just a way to get more food? Javra asks. No, that will be a happy accident. The best kind of accident, Javra says. I suppose so. What's next? Winifred asks. Well, you kind of messed up the purposes of these tests, and mine was always a throwaway anyways. The Vishanyan don't have a very robust culture for food. More rations than anything. Oh my goodness, are you all right? Winifred asked Velocity. I'm fine. Rations are healthy and plentiful, Velocity states. But they're rations, barely a step up from nutrient bars, Winifred states. Anyways, my big test was on precision and subtlety. Can you eat carefully or not leave any trace behind? Basically, I'm going to have some drones moving in a patrol path, and you have to eat your meal without being spotted or leaving a trail. Meaning the noodle and sauce dish has to be eaten cleanly as well. Velocity offers, and Winifred looks considerate. Scene change. Brutality in the family. Harold was off to do his own part of the investigation. It was likely for the best. Either that or he was still around and using that unusual ability to blend. One of Brutality's ears flicks to the side as he focuses. The problem is that when one looks that exquisitely hard for a pattern, it's almost impossible not to imagine one even where there aren't any. It's part of the issue that Brutality has not explained to the man. It's just so dangerous. A level of stealth where fantasy and reality blur. Ace taps him on the shoulder and he looks to her. She signs that she's willing to go around the back and he nods. Most of the family reflexively head to higher ground when infiltrating an area. The front or back door is rarely an option when most of them very much prefer the window, which is why he's going in the front. A drone flies overhead and his ears swivel to catch the sound profile. There is a bit of wear and tear at the front right rotor and he doesn't otherwise react to it, even as it quickly turns around to get a good look at him. And it's not too suspicious, but his back is up and he has long learned to trust his instincts. The vehicle they're tracking has led to this building. Registered to one Alice Thanquil, a fire Arumenta, an odd jobber. On the surface at least. Drac has dug up a potential 5 more identities of the woman, and if he's correct about even one of them, then Alice is very much just a vacation identity for when she doesn't want to deal with the infamy of the other IDs. He enters the apartment building and quickly gets into the elevator and heads on up. He hears a very distinct click, distorted through the elevator shaft and suppressed by the ceiling. He lets himself phase through the bottom of the elevator and hangs onto the bottom and away from the mechanisms. It climbs up 2 floors and he can hear someone step into the elevator, and she lets out a humming sound that completely outlines her to his hearing. Outlines her tilting her head down, withdrawing a weapon, and he moves before she fires and sends hot plasma through several safety mechanisms. The woman says nothing as she turns the pistol up and fires at the supports and emergency brakes of the elevator to drop it on a Brutality who phases clean through it and rushes up to kick her in the chest. She bends backwards to half dodge, half absorb the blow, and her legs come up to lock around his waist. She tries to take control of the situation, but he braces his wings against the open door, counter-grabs around her own waist, and swings back into the rear of the elevator shaft. Her weapon goes tumbling below, but she grabs at one of the still-moving cables and is ripped clean out of his grip in a single moment before letting go and grabbing onto the wall as she pulls out another weapon. Brutality turns to face her as she points the gun at him, and they both pause as the elevator slams into the bottom of the shaft. She's covered head to toe in armor, and it reveals she has the typical bipedal anatomy and size and nothing else. Her weapon is modified to look like it uses Plasma, laser, and kinetic all at once. A bluffing game. Even if you know how to deal with all three, they don't overlap. You can't dodge lasers, only plasma and kinetics. You can resist lasers and plasma with anti-thermal techniques, but a kinetic round punches through. Heavy shielding will stop a laser and a kinetic blast but be slagged by plasma. There is a slight twitch to her finger, and he decides on dodging. The kinetic round is slightly slower than expected, and he braces himself in time to absorb the sudden explosion going off less than a foot away. It still rattles him, and he starts tumbling. There's enough sense left in his head to keep somewhat after her, but she forces a door open and races out onto the next level. Whoever she is and whatever is going on, she needs to be stopped before she takes a hostage. There's a sudden sharp retort of a chemically propelled kinetic and the crashing of glass as the attacker suddenly staggers as her left leg suddenly shoots back out of her control. The remains of a bullet that slammed into her knee falling to the floor around her. Todd's aim is immaculate, even through a window at the end of the hallway, but the armor is tough. There is a shadow and Hafid is there, with a curved sword O2 and flashing. They both pull Axiom as the woman moves around him before launching some sort of attack out of her gauntlet. Hafid dodges and continues the attack, even as Brutality, all his wits fully returned, catches up and moves to incapacitate the woman. She is suddenly teleported into the distance and Hafid redirects his swing so as not to delimb his own father as both men regain their balance and rush out. The missed attack must have been a self-activating teleportation beacon in their smacking sound, and the woman comes flying through the same window with Ace in hot pursuit. Silently, the massive Lopen woman is a blur of fur, fury, and fist as she batters at the armored figure, systematically working around her furious attempts to defend herself and ripping into the connections on the armor. It takes only a few moments before Ace is forced to use her size to brace against the walls and force the attacker back, ripping off a chunk of shoulder armor to reveal darkened skin beneath with a few flicks of flame along the smooth surface. "Surrender, Alice Thanquil." Brutality orders and the woman turns. Her face is covered, but he can still see the look of utter contempt. "I think not," Thanquil states before moving for her belt. Brutality rushes her, but she's fast and vanishes into thin air. He gathers himself and after a moment looks from Ace to Hafid. "I managed to plant a tracer on her. You?" "I have," Hafid confirms and Ace wags her tail as she nods. "Good," Brutality notes. OOCS Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 385, Capes and Conundrums. "So, is no one going to say it?" Drac asks as they're all perched above and overlooking a seemingly innocuous storehouse. "No." Hafid all but spits out and Drac grins, even as they confirm the signals. She clearly found one and is ready for them. It's well away from the other two. She's a bit more clever than we thought. She is near none of the tracers, and there is the slight grind of machinery. She has automated defenses overwatching the positions where she laid the devices. Brutality states. They wait a single minute as Ace finishes scouting around the building and returns. She signs that the target is still in the area. "You sure?" Nightwings asks, and she gives him an unimpressed look before pointing to the massive air conditioning unit. She then signs fresh scent. "Enough. We trust our ears. Ace can trust her nose." Brutality states. "We're going in. There's at least one trap laid, likely two, and probably an ambush as well. I've got overwatch from the outside." Harold's voice suddenly echoes from Ace's communicator, and her eyes widen comically as she reaches for the device and furiously texts at him. "Yes, I'm watching and going to make sure she can't run. I trust you all can take down a crazy merc." Ace types again. "Okay, yeah, I also have a new trick I want to test, but can't test it outside a potentially military situation. So I dearly hope she tries to run in a heavily armed piece of hardware, or at least armored because I want to see what this baby can do. For the sake of collateral, we're going to try avoiding that," Brutality states. "Well, yes, believe me, I'm only shooting with the trench, the lava, or a lava serpent as a backstop," Harold replies. "Now I'm really curious," Todd remarks. How about we try to avoid him needing to use whatever handheld artillery he has? Brutality suggests gently. Sounds smart. Let's go. Basic sweep creep. Infiltrate the outsides first and slowly enter in max stealth to head inwards and meet up. No attacking, just stealth, then hit whatever we find that's interesting. Nightwing says, sounding all business. I'm going to assume that plan summary was for my benefit. Harold notes. Yep. Nightwing states, popping the word before launching off his perch and gently swooping down. His family follows with Ace leaping down from rooftop to fire escape to rooftop as she approaches ground level at a pace just shy of free-falling. More akin to the flickering shadows one sees in a nightmare. The Waynes slip into the building, untouched by physical matter and unstoppable by conventional defenses. There is a series of bonks and some scrabbling as the Waynes fall out of the building as a series of tri-tight panels that were not on the blueprints impedes their paths. And if properly braced, even a foil thin layer of tri-tight can stop someone from phasing through. In the distance, Brutality can vaguely make out Harold snickering at the sight and adjusting his grip on something massive. He takes a moment to glance in the proper direction and sees a tiny little blur perched on top of a nearby skyscraper. He gets a wave, but the slight silhouette he can make out shows that Harold has a big gun. Okay, so she's a little better prepared than we thought, Nightwings mutters as they all climb onto the roof. Windows. Windows. Brutality agrees before looking up. Stop snickering, Harold. Knowing you can't make me, is the barely audible reply, but is more or less exactly what was expected. The second attempt and infiltration goes a great deal smoother as they slip in through the windows and find themselves on the catwalks that make up semi-second level to the building. It's a big storehouse, so just a gigantic frame with rows upon rows of products of all kinds and a catwalk around the top. Most likely to direct simple robots and drones to load and unload things without being in the way. What is concerning, though, is that a great deal of civilian-grade sound dampeners are on throughout the building, all blinking merrily, and a trap. As Sonir, the family's first impulse is to smash the dampeners, but even the crudest of the crude would have a paired device it would alert when it stops working. Breaking the dampeners tells Alice exactly where they are, but leaving them on leaves them half blind. And the girl is not shy about her attempts to kill, so the chances that there are bombs interlocked with the devices is also very real. Brutality Wayne, patriarch of the hunting and law enforcement branch of the Wayne family. Alice's voice says from the speakers. Several centuries of age, exact date unknown due to a viral attack on the station your family was on at the time. Apprenticed to several empty handmasters, regarded as vicious and virtuous. Has shown a very distinct preference for extremely active brides and an extremely active lifestyle. Noted as spending several formative years in the care of his Uncle Pen, who was between enlistments and special forces, this has been noted as a clear and obvious sign of development. I'm sorry, but is publicly available information supposed to intimidate me? Showing that you know how to use a search engine means that you have reached the mental stage of a 6-year-old. Do you want congratulations for that? Is it your most impressive feat? Cute. You think this was supposed to be intimidation? You need to reassess your standards. Coming from a woman who immediately skips to violence during an investigation. Coming from a fool who dismisses violent actions as inherently flawed or foolish. Are you not a hunter? Do you not track down great prey? I'm a bounty hunter. The greatest prey of all, a lava serpent, is a big, dangerous target, but not a smart one, not an adaptive one. There are no great serpents that are unusually clever, no stealthier than average members of their species. Just one big monster after another. But a person? There are many more categories. Do you have a point to all this? You're outnumbered. We found the heart of your power. Surrender and there will be no harm for... Hafid begins to state before Alice starts laughing. Oh dear, and here I was afraid you wouldn't give me the lead up to the next bit of entertainment. There are a series of bangs as numerous containers suddenly shred themselves with large walls growing out of them. You have got to be... Drac protests as walls slam into place through the catwalk and cut them off from one another. The walls suddenly start glowing, and then small drones activate and start spraying with a tri-tight base paint. The drones get shredded, but There is power enough to keep the walls impermeable regardless. In fact, without the tri-tight, the walls are even more dangerous. Now, do attempt to prove yourself as something worth. The ceiling shatters above them all, and they're all out before the smoke can clear. Unfortunate, Alice notes. They get clear of the trapped warehouse and reconvene. Ace's communicator activates again. You guys all right? I didn't get you with shrapnel, did I? Are medics required? I'm fine. Got my hair messed up, though. Nightwing's notes as he pulls a bit of rubble out of his hair and flicks it away. Ace sends her answer via text. Okay, if no one has anything else to say, that's good. And I'm sorry my bombs leave a nasty lingering smell. Ace, now, hold on a moment, Harold says before the line goes dead, and Brutality looks up to the tiny figure high above. He's leveled the weapon at a distortion in the air. It wasn't there when they entered the warehouse. The distortion suddenly moves, and there is a blast of light followed by a bang so massive that Brutality struggles to stay upright. For just a moment, there is a streak of fire through the air before it's suddenly an explosion as a now very visible ship is shot out of the sky in pieces. It's been hit so hard that all the chunks are crashing towards and tumbling towards the cave entrance that leads to the lava trenches. A figure launches themselves out of it before the entire ship structure goes sailing over the edge in a screaming mess of twisted metal, burning wreckage, and the weapon Harold is now hold at arm's length is glowing hot and clearly drooping. The sheer amount of power it gave out has completely compromised its structure. Huh, so that's what that technique does with a pop gun and the brakes off, Harold notes. Don't do that again. My ears are still ringing, Nightwing states. Yeah, this is more anti-ship than anti-person, Harold admits. Is the roof you're on melting around you? Drac asks. Yes, Harold replies as Ace lets out a whine of discomfort and displeasure. Oh, that's unfair. Now I feel guilty. Isn't the pop gun a silenced weapon? Through axiom, no less? How did it make that boom? I just fired a 120 by 570 millimeter round at Mach 15. Initial silence or not, this thing hitting air is more than enough for any boom. Holy shit, the person is still getting up after getting rattled like that. It must have been like being stuck into a dryer with a brick, Harold notes. I'm getting another weapon out if you want me to take care of her. We have this, Brutality states as he starts flying. If you're sure, Harold calls over from where he's standing on the building. Noticeably, he hasn't moved from his spot, and the larger weapon is put away in favor of something smaller. She's running, Harold calls over as they pick up the pace. I can see that, Brutality says as he puts on speed and then straight on teleports and twists in the air to slam into Alice's side. The world catches on fire and he shifts the axiom to protect him from the heat and smoke. But he has barely the time to blink before a weapon comes right for him. It's a large metal pole that he barely deflects with his wing and feels his bones rattle. He reinforces his body further even as he blocks attack after attack as Alice grows only faster and faster and faster until he catches her rhythm and sends a pulse of axiom up his body to shatter the staff and send her off balance. Then his fist slams into her armor, and the sheer force of it still transfers energy into her through the protection. He batters her over and over again as hard and as fast as he can, but she's paying attention to and finds his own rhythm and uses it to deflect a punch and brings her armored head down to slam into his face. He staggers back a step, and she draws a pair of blades she brings down on him. There is a blast of sound and one sword shatters from an anti-material shot, but Alice keeps her pace and doesn't even seem to notice as she transfers into a flurry of slashes with her sword that he has to dodge from and deflect on the back end, slowly weakening the weapon. But she reinforces it with axiom having learned his own trick. He finds a gap in her flurries and slams both fists into her stomach to send her back a few steps. There is another blast, this time from another direction as Todd brings his own rifle to bear and shatters her other sword. Brutality is on her again and once more giving her a beating. But this time he understands her better and can stun her enough to start using axiom to weaken her armor as she's dazed by the pain. Halfway through his own storm of attacks, he pauses, grabs her now compromised stomach armor, and tears it off, leaving only a small plate in each one of his hands and her stomach exposed entirely. As she staggers, he brings his hands together while charging the shards of armor and smashes them into either side of her helmet, cracking it so bad his fingers find the brakes, and he rips it entirely off her head. White hair wreathed in flame, glowing yellow eyes and darker tan skin. She staggers back while gasping and then focuses with a look of complete and total fury. The world turns into fire. Stupid little man, thinking that just because a few druggies and muggers soiled their panties at the sight of you, that you're somehow strong? You have no idea what the galaxy has in store for foolish little bats that push too hard. Alice states as the fire coalesces around her, and the heat, light, and flame are all concentrated on the gaps in her armor and two massive discs on her forearms. Her every step leaves glowing footprints on the floor, and against the natural black backdrop of the obsidian walls of the city, she stands out like a star.